The sun had only just risen when the girl on the hotel steps opened her battered notebook and began to write. Her pencil scratched against the thin paper with urgency, as though every number and every line she captured was a way of holding on to a life that was slipping too quickly away. Her name was Lily, and she had been living on the streets for almost a year. The marble steps of the Crestwood Hotel were her makeshift desk, the passing hum of cars her background music, and the watchful glances of strangers her silent audience. She did not care what they thought. As long as she had her notebook, the world made a little more sense. One chilly afternoon, as golden leaves blew in circles along the pavement, Lily noticed a little girl in a silk dress sitting just a few steps away. The child's shoes sparkled with rhinestones, but her face was scrunched up in frustration as she stared at a math workbook. A chauffeur leaned against a sleek black car nearby, too absorbed in his phone to notice her distress. Lily hesitated before scooting closer. She had learned to be invisible on the streets, but something in the girl's teary eyes pulled her forward. "Math homework?" Lily asked softly, her voice rough from cold nights. The little girl looked up, startled. She had chestnut curls framing her face and eyes that shone with innocence. She sniffled and nodded. "It doesn't make sense," she whispered. Lily tilted her head, offering a small smile. "Can I see?" The child handed over the workbook, and Lily examined the page. Fractions, word problems, to her. It was easy numbers had always been her comfort. She crouched beside the girl and explained in gentle tones, turning the fractions into stories of chocolate bars and shared cakes. The girl giggled through her tears, her frown melting into delight as she grasped the concept. Within minutes, the math problems were solved, but the real magic was in the little girl's laughter. She looked at Lily with admiration that no stranger had ever given her before. "You're really good at this," she said. "Thank you." The chauffeur called her name Emily and ushered her into the car. But before climbing inside, Emily looked back, her small voice filled with sincerity. "Will you be here tomorrow?" Lily hesitated, then nodded. Across the street, from the backseat of a limousine, a man had been watching. Richard Harrington, billionaire real estate mogul, sat with his arms folded, his sharp eyes fixed on the strange sight of his daughter sitting comfortably beside a homeless teenager. He had built his empire on wealth, power, and precision. Yet his little girl, who had never wanted for anything, had just found joy in the company of someone who seemed to have nothing. That evening, Emily would not stop talking about Lily. She chattered through dinner, her fork clattering against her plate as she explained how Lily made fractions fun and how she wanted to see her again. Richard listened in silence, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the girl on the hotel steps, the notebook clutched tightly in her hands. Who was she? Why was she there? And why did his daughter, who had access to the best tutors money could buy, prefer her over all of them? The next day, curiosity tugged at him until he found himself returning to the hotel. Sure enough, Lily was there, bent over her notebook, lips moving as she worked through an equation. Richard stepped out of his car, his expensive shoes clicking against the pavement. She looked up, startled, and clutched her notebook to her chest. "You helped my daughter yesterday," he said, his tone firm but not unkind. Lily rose to her feet quickly. I didn't mean any harm, sir. She just needed help." "What's your name?" he asked. "Lily. Do you have parents, Lily?" The question hung heavy between them. She lowered her gaze, not anymore. Richard studied her in silence. Then, with a gesture, he opened the car door. "Get in." Fear flashed across her eyes. "Why?" "My daughter won't stop asking for you. I want to know why." She hesitated, then climbed inside. The car smelled of leather and polish, a world apart from the damp alleys she had slept in. Emily's face lit up the moment she saw her. "Lily, you came." She threw her arms around her, her joy bubbling over. Richard sat opposite them, watching the strange bond between his daughter and this girl who had nothing but a notebook. Days turned into weeks. Lily became a constant presence in Emily's life, tutoring her in math, reading, and even history. She spoke with a passion that made lessons come alive, transforming dull facts into adventures and puzzles. Emily thrived under her guidance in ways no expensive tutor had ever achieved. Richard watched with silent astonishment, wondering how life had discarded someone with so much brilliance. He began to ask questions. He discovered that Lily had once been at the top of her class, her teachers praising her sharp mind and endless curiosity. But after her parents died in an accident, the foster system failed her, homes came and went. Eventually, she slipped through the cracks until the streets became her only shelter. She held onto her notebook as her last anchor, refusing to let her mind waste away even as her world crumbled. Richard, a man who had spent his life building skyscrapers and fortunes, found himself unsettled by the thought. How could a city overflow with his properties while a girl like Lily had nowhere to call home? His empire, he realized, was built on foundations of stone and glass. But what of human lives? One evening, as he entered his study, he found Emily and Lily huddled together over a book. Emily looked up with a grin. "Daddy, Lily says anyone can learn anything if they believe in themselves. She makes me feel smart." The words struck him deeper than any business rival ever had. For years, he had measured his worth in profits and deals. But his daughter's happiness, her sense of self-worth, had come not from him, but from a girl society had abandoned. Richard made a decision that would shock everyone who knew him. He hired Lily not just as Emily's tutor, but as part of his household. He arranged for her to return to school, paid her fees, and gave her a room in their home. At first, she resisted, her pride bristling against charity. But Richard looked her in the eye and said, "This isn't charity. This is recognition of your value. You've given my daughter more than I could ever repay." The news spread quickly. The press, always hungry for a story about the elusive billionaire, pounced on the tale of a homeless girl welcomed into his mansion. Critics called it a publicity stunt, but those who saw the genuine bond between Emily and Lily knew the truth. Richard Harrington had changed not through mergers or profits, but through the quiet patience of a girl with nothing to her name but a notebook. Lily thrived in her new environment. With stability and resources, her natural brilliance shone brighter than ever. She excelled in her studies, and soon she was not only tutoring Emily, but also mentoring other children from disadvantaged backgrounds, invited into the Harrington home for weekend lessons. Richard, once obsessed with power, found himself funding community programs, building learning centers, and creating opportunities for children who, like Lily, might otherwise be forgotten. Yet it was not the media, nor his business partners, nor even the applause of society that mattered most to him. It was the look in his daughter's eyes when she solved a problem on her own, the laughter of children filling his mansion, and the quiet determination of Lily, who reminded him every day that brilliance can bloom in the harshest places if only given light. Years later, when Lily stood on a stage in her graduation gown, valedictorian of her class, Richard and Emily sat in the front row, their applause thundering. Lily spoke of hope, of second chances, of the power of kindness. She spoke of a day when a little girl needed help with fractions, and a homeless girl with a notebook had chosen to step forward instead of staying invisible. And she ended with words that made Richard's chest tighten with pride. Sometimes, all it takes to change a life is to believe in someone who has forgotten how to believe in themselves. The crowd rose to their feet, their cheers echoing through the hall. Richard knew then that the greatest investment he had ever made was not in buildings or land, but in the life of a girl who had once sat on hotel steps with nothing but dreams. And as Lily walked off that stage, Emily grabbed her hand and whispered, "You changed us, Lily, forever." If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts below. Your support helps us share more stories that inspire hope and kindness.